The motion before the House is this House believes a nationwide lockdown is not the solution to a global pandemic.
We firmly believe here on side Preposition that the combination of significant economic and social damage with the fact that other options are available all highlight why a lockdown is both counterintuitive and does more harm than good. Professor Devi Sridhar, Chair of Global Public Health at Edinburgh University, stated that there will never be no risk. It's about how we reduce that risk.
And on that point,
just as we do with other kinds of daily dangers like driving and cycling. No, thank you. Therefore, when we examine better alternatives to a lockdown, we begin to see that policy does more harm than good. A nation not crippled by lockdown but sensibly protecting the vulnerable and its health services, whilst continuing to operate it, is a far more sustainable option than hunkering down the workforce and hoping that is enough. For these reasons, I beg to propose.
Today I'm going to be focusing on the result that COVID-19 has had on criminal activity in both a physical and online sense. My first point I would like you to consider is the positive effects COVID-19 has had on what is commonly termed street crime and narcotic criminal activity. However, the benefits go beyond catching criminals. Societies and microcosms of them are benefiting. The many British teenagers involved in the urban and county lines narcotics problem within the UK now have some temporary relief from the often brutal gangs they are forced to work for. My second point is that of cybercrime is also being affected. People are online far more than before due to isolation and general lockdown. To date, the reports are numerous about the various reprehensible activities criminal gangs are undertaking. Lockdown and more people affected by these fraudulent deeds are forcing more to wake up to this scourge and ask for resources to be directed against this personal and societal threat.
On a point of information.
Yes.
But that simply sounds like an acceleration in increased counter-cyber campaigns that would have happened anyway as our societal reliance on technology grows. So is that really a benefit of quarantine alone?
Definitely, it's a very good point, and actually there are some arguments to say it will happen. However, what this is presented as with a very short window of opportunity to get a grip of this situation whilst under controlled circumstances. It's a fine line between a police state and an opportunity for justice, but we can use this attempt at virus protection for more than just inhibiting physical contact. Thank you.
I'm now going to explore actually some of the major negative impacts a lockdown can and has had on the nation. But first, just to pick up on a few points from the opposition speech, I'd come straight to the speaker's points on crime, this idea that there's been some kind of short-term drop in criminal activity offering kids a way out, and that this presumably will then lead to a drop later. I would argue that that logic chain is in fact false, because crime is directly linked to drops in income and poor economic performance. The impacts of lockdown is twofold. It's economic and social. The economic impacts are somewhat obvious as to how they come about. Locking down the nation cripples the economy, and this is not just detrimental, it is dangerous. Financial damages will have a much longer term effect than the pandemic. We only have to look at the fallout from the financial crisis of 2008. This also opens up another potential...
Point of information,
please.
Very valid point, but surely the government has a duty of care to protect people. You concentrate very clearly on the economics, but there is a duty, an ethical duty of care.
Thank you, and we would totally agree, but actually we would argue that by maintaining that economic performance to allow, economic social programs to be funded and prevent longer term damage to the economy, that actually the government is fulfilling its duty of care more so than it would be by damaging it needlessly with quarantine.
today I'll be focusing on two key aspects of this debate. Firstly, the environmental impact and how much the Earth has shown recovery in the last few months, and secondly, a topic that is incredibly important as social distancing rules relaxed. Has quarantine helped, and should it be continued? However, firstly, I will address some points of rebuttal to the proposition. Firstly, Jenny brought up several times that there's a risk, and there is obviously high unemployment, and many public businesses have been closed down. However, due to an excessive feeling of cabin fever when we finally break out of quarantine, the high demand on businesses and public services such as barbershops, restaurants, clubs, pubs, will be able to help with employment and economic recovery. My second point regards the environmental impact that this quarantining has. Now, I appreciate that the government has no right to keep people inside on grounds of sinking CO2 levels, but they do have a right to take the appropriate measures to stop infection spreading. Environmental recovery is simply a bonus to this pandemic, one that can potentially slow the rate of global warming by up to 30 years. Yes.
But would you not agree that a temporary environmental rebound is no substitute for sustainable reductions in damage in the long term, which is not possible to fund with economies crippled by quarantine?
Okay, no, I completely agree with what you're saying. However, I personally believe that due to the ability now for people to see through social media the massive positive effects that quarantining has had on the environment. So to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I hope we have managed to outline some key aspects of our side of the debate today. The benefits of quarantine are so much more than just preventing infection. It's given us an opportunity that has never previously been available to cut down on CO2 emissions and increase air quality, and it's given a window for the government to crack down on criminal activity, as mentioned by the Wing Commander. It is a proven way of preventing COVID-19 from being passed person to person, and it holds so many additional benefits.